Hello, everyone. This is Joe Boston with Real Estate for Life. Hopefully, you'll be ready to make a change in your life by tuning in to us regularly. Tonight's topic is going to cover how you can make money with rentals, even in this high price market. There's a lot of speculation on what's going to happen in the future with real estate prices and how all of us are going to survive with all the expenses that are in front of us. But I do have a really good strategy. So some of the strategies that we talk about, just when you're going to meetings and looking at how you're gonna be successful in this business, are fix and flip, right? Rentals, owner finance. Some of those are common knowledge to all of you, but over the last 15 years, we've had to migrate as real estate professionals to different strategies to be successful. One of them has been a mainstay for me over the last decade, and I've actually grown that part of my business, and it's rentals. And a lot of you are going to ask, well, how are you doing that when you're paying, higher prices? Property taxes are really, really expensive. And in addition, what are the tenants like, right? If you're doing rentals. So one of the processes is called the Housing Choice Voucher Program, also known as Section 8. And I'm going to walk you through the process from a tenant's perspective and then talk to you a little bit about why it's really, really nice. So the application process is pretty simple. The housing authorities will actually take an application and they screen for evictions, uh, drugs use, criminal activity. They want to make sure that the tenants are not going to be any hindrance to the landlords that are actually going to accept their voucher. So it's pretty robust. I mean, a lot of people have a stigma associated with this program, but let me tell you, there's one thing that the clients of this program do not want, and that's to lose their voucher. And so it is one of the best ways now to secure your financial stability when you're talking about rentals. In addition to that, a lot of you might have experienced the last year when there was a moratorium. Well, if you were not on the program or weren't utilizing the program, a lot of landlords were subject to not getting any of their rents, where people that were actually on the program, meaning they had housing choice voucher tenants, they were getting 90% of their rents. And so it was really a good thing for people that were on the program. It was really, really good. And now what they've had to do, meaning the housing authorities, is they've had to adjust their rates to fair market rents. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that here in a little bit, because I don't think that a lot of people really understand that you could really be profitable utilizing this program. So one of the other things that they'll do is they'll have what's called a request for tenancy approval form. And this is a form that has to be filled out by the client and you, the landlord. And this will cover all of the details in regards to the property. And so that you are giving them full approval to rent your property with this program. So again, they will actually bring the request for tenancy program approval form with them. And why this is important is because once you meet with these people or the prospective clients, what's nice about it is you get to meet them in person and kind of evaluate if this is going to be a good fit for you and your property. Now, remember, this is just the same type of process as you would go through someone that's not on the program. It's just they're being subsidized, through a housing authority. So definitely, this is one thing that you want to consider. So also one of the strategies that I want to talk about is we talk about find, fund, fix, and flip. But I also want to talk about buy, rehab, rent, and refinance. And that's known as the BRRRR strategy. Well, if you're going to rent, you still have to, generate a positive cash flow. And so one of the things you want to identify is where can you get those high cash flows? Well, I'm going to show you that again on the payment standards, but the Housing Choice Voucher Program allows you to gain those cash flows and also guarantee that you're going to get 90% of your rent. Again, the 10% is required from the tenant typically, but if you do not get that, you are still, winning by getting the majority of your rent without any peril of chasing down the tenant. And so that's a really important aspect of this program. So again, the voucher is good for 60 days. So what'll happen is once the client is approved, and there's a long waiting list. I believe in Dallas, it's 3 years. And in Fort Worth, it's 4 years. So there's a long waiting list. So they don't, once their number comes up, they definitely want to be able to obtain a property. But it's really tough for people right now because one is the inventory is relatively low for certain types of properties. So it's determined by family size. And it basically it provides an analysis of how many adults and children are in the household. And it puts children, 2 children in a room, so that's how they determine how many rooms are necessary for a family. So if you have 2 children and 1 adult, they will give you a 2-bedroom or assign a 2-bedroom home to that family, even though the daughter and son might want their own room. It doesn't work that way. But if it's a 2-bedroom, not a lot of us as real estate investors buy 2-bedroom, 1-bath homes. I mentioned that because that's an avenue for you. That's actually a nugget that you want to write down and start to look for, because there's not a huge inventory of 2-bedroom, 1-bath for people on this program. So that being said, you might want to start targeting that arena, because now the rents have gone up for 2-bedroom, 1-bath. And so it's really important for you to note. Clients that are on this program also will have to qualify by having a deposit and also having a gainful employment. You get to know what that is and learn about that throughout the application process. So one of the things that the voucher is used is to authorize the family to look for a property. They will approach you and let you know that they do have a voucher. The one thing that you want to be mindful of is if they don't disclose it, then at the last minute they tell you, that's a red flag. But typically they're going to disclose that there is a voucher in play, and do you actually work with the program? And that's fine. And I want to note that it's a really good thing for you to look at these type of clients that are on a voucher, because it's hard for them to find a property. The average stay for me has exceeded 4 years. And primarily because it is tough for them to find other landlords that want to participate in the program, but also for those non-standard type of properties like a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, it's tougher for them to find. So they don't want to move. Now, I will say, obviously, if their family grows, then they'll have to get a larger place, but you won't find it hard to rent a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. So that leads me to say it doesn't just have to be single family. It could be townhouses or condos. So you do not want to overlook that as well. The only issue I would say with townhouses or condos is there is a homeowners association fee that might actually take away from your cash flow. So you want to be mindful of that. But look at those non-standard type of properties that will eliminate some of your competition when you're looking at utilizing, a specific program or finding a specific program for your portfolio. So the inspection process. So this is near and dear to our hearts because this is what qualifies you to rent your property. So once the client has selected your property and you've said, okay, I want to participate, then the inspection it'll trigger an inspection. So an inspector will go out to your house, and there's actually a list that you'll receive from the housing authority, and they will provide that to you, and you will have to adhere to their regulations, right? They'll have to make sure that it's structurally sound and that there are specific guidelines that you are responsible for, like keyless deadbolts, egress and ingress from the rear and front of the house, and there's a lot of different specifications that might come into play depending on where your property is and how it's laid out. But you will receive that list, and then you will get inspected. And once that passes, then that tenant will be able to move into your property. But we'll also talk about if there's issues with the property. So you'll have a certain amount of time to rectify those problems if there are any. And just similarly to someone that's not on the program, but you are governed by that because obviously the housing authority is paying for the majority of your rent. So points to remember, units must be completely ready. So once you think it's completely ready, then it'll schedule an inspection or trigger an inspection, and then the client will move into your house once it is passed and based on your negotiating when they want to move in. So if there's any delay of the paperwork or the tenant being able to move in, then that'll all be negotiated, and you'll be working with the housing authority to determine when the move-in date is, and then that's when you'll start to get your payment from the housing authority. One thing of note is that the tenant, if they do have a portion that they're responsible for, that is treated as their rental portion. So they have to pay that to you based on the terms of the lease. So if you're requiring them to have that payment made to you by the 3rd, then if it's not made to you by the 3rd, you can start the eviction process. And it doesn't matter if it's $1 or it's $100 or it's $3,000. It's all treated the same. But remember, the majority of your rent will be coming from the housing authority. So you'll be receiving typically 2 checks, one from the housing authority and then the second one from the client or the tenant themselves. So it's a really good program because, again, it's hedging your risk because you're getting the majority of your rent from the client or the tenant. So like I said, if the actual inspection fails or an annual inspection fails, the landlord is given 30 days to bring that home or residence into compliance. So they don't have to make payments after that time if the landlord is not in compliance. So I just want to make sure that you're aware that you have to make sure that this property is in compliance and that all items that fail must be fixed or repaired. Now, it might sound like a big deal, but it's really not, because most of you have your properties in compliance. Now, if a tenant does break something, it's just like a normal lease. They're responsible for repairs, just like any other property. So there's not much difference except for the housing authority will be inspecting the property to make sure that it's in compliance. It also provides you with someone that's routinely looking at your property, right? Even if it's annual, you should be looking at your properties once a quarter, but if not, annually is mandatory that the housing authority is out reviewing your property to make sure it's in compliance. So one of the things that people really don't understand or really are concerned about is, how do I select a tenant? Or are there things that a tenant doesn't have to do. No, that's not the case. They are treated as any other uh, prospective tenant. Again, they're just being subsidized. So they are responsible for their security deposit. So the rule is typically anywhere from $100 to $200 lower than the rental amount for your security deposit. You don't want it to exceed the monthly amount, because then obviously if there is an issue, you would owe them money. And then also, I don't particularly like making it the equivalent of 1 month's rent, because then the prospective tenant will think that they can leave the last month and use that as the deposit as the 1 month's rent, which you're not supposed to do and are restricted from doing. So I typically, if it's $1,500 a month, I will make their security deposit $1,400 a month, $1,400, just so that it doesn't equate to 1 month's rent. So really quickly, one of the things I want to highlight is I'm going to give you a nugget on how to make sure you're targeting or marketing to areas that will give you the highest rents. And so we're going to talk about that with the payment standard. So each housing authority will have what's called a payment standard. And the payment standard will dictate how much the housing authority will pay for the number of bedrooms. Now, that's what's really cool, because they pay by the number of bedrooms, not bathrooms. So you could have 1 bathroom and 20 bedrooms. Are going to pay you by the number of bedrooms. Okay. So if you'll look at the slide here, I'm going to use 3 bedrooms as basically the guideline for looking at this payment standard. So you're going to look at the zip codes on the left, and you're going to start to screen which ones will pay you the highest amount. So if you were to compare the zip code 76023, and you look at the 3-bedroom allowable payment standard, that is $1,771 for a 3-bedroom. So, which sounds pretty good, but it depends on how you purchase the property. But if you equate that same 3-bedroom and you scroll down to 76034, you can see that for that same 3-bedroom, they pay $3,168. So what you're paying attention to here is, if you can find an opportunity in 76034 and you can get that payment to anywhere around $1,500 to $2,000, you're going to be netting over $1,000 a month. And so you'll see that that is one of the tricks that we actually use when we're talking about being successful with rentals. We're targeting those areas that the payment standard is high, and wholesalers or people just might not want to rent. They want to fix and flip, might not be aware. But if you're in 76034 and you find an opportunity for, let's say, $150,000, you can see your net could be well over $1,000 positive cash flow a month. So I highly encourage you to look at all the payment standards. This applies, pretty much in most areas that have the Housing Choice Voucher program. It's determined and based on zip code. So you just analyze those different zip codes and find the highest payable amounts in those areas. And then you market those areas. And so when you're working with your realtor or your wholesaler, you're going to give them that list of the top 5 to 10 zip codes that you're actually looking for. Meaning you identified that those are high paying, and you know that you can cash flow heavily, but then you can back into exactly how much you need to pay for that property. So I wanted to give you that nugget and let you know that rentals are still a really good way to be profitable in these markets. But you have to be strategic on where you're actually buying now, because there are, a lot of price creep that's going on. But if you're specific and you're guiding your buying strategy towards zip codes that are highly profitable, I mean, they pay a lot, then you'll be successful. So I'm glad that I got to speak with you about that. That's how I've made a lot of money in real estate over the years. I'll continue to do that. Now, here we build and we try to build in those areas that have those zip codes that have those high payment standards, because then we can kind of dictate, what our cost of the build or what we're paying for is. But you can do this too. And I wanted to share that with you. So we're going to continue to give really good information on real estate for life. So if you're ready to change your life and make real estate your life, tune into Real Estate for Life. We want to make sure that you're well versed on all the things that we're doing as real estate professionals. So I will definitely see you next time, and keep looking for good real estate, and we will definitely see you. Also, want to just say that we have a real estate investment group, which is Dallas REIG, which stands for Dallas Real Estate Investment Group. In addition to that, we have a brokerage, which is Next Level Realty Group. So if you're interested in that, then please let us know, and we will respond and get back to you with more information. So I will see you next time.